So is the Su-30SM2 or the Eurofighter AESA the better 14.7 in air realistic, so a 16v16 setting? That's what we're going to be going over here today. So we're going to be taking a look at the stats for the jets, and I'm also going to be chiming in on my personal experience with both of these jets. If you don't know who I am, I'm quite a good air realistic player that plays higher tier jets. Now, as always, if you guys do enjoy the video content, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I have started a membership as well if you do want to support further. And I will be leaving timestamps in the video here, so feel free to skip around if you want. And we're going to start off here with flight performance / flight model, as it is going to tie into every other aspect of what we're going to go over here today in this video. So starting off with acceleration between the two jets, we're going to do the time to speed parameters here, from 0.8 Mach to 1.5 Mach at an altitude of 8,500 meters. So we can see that the Eurofighter, 35.4 seconds, so pretty quick compared to the SM2, which is going to be 53.4 seconds. So the Eurofighter's acceleration is around 18 seconds faster, which is a huge difference. Now let's change that to 1.8 Mach, and we can see here a Eurofighter 63.8 seconds compared to the SM2 at 88.8 seconds. 25-second difference there, guys. Very, very huge difference between the acceleration of the jets. So getting a little bit more specific into the engine performance here. So the engine performance parameters. Again, same 0.8 Mach to 1.5, 8,500 meters. So I'll break these down in a second here, but we have the AMAX for the Eurofighter being at 7.70. We have the AMAX for the SM2 being around 6.08, so it is lower. AMAX is going to be the most important one here. And then we have TMAX with the Eurofighter being at 16,130, the TMAX with the SM2 at 24,027, the drag for the SM2 being at 15,169, and then the drag being 8,010 for the Eurofighter. Now, again, these are very important numbers when we take a look at engine performance, and there's a couple of specific reasons we'll get into it. I do want to break down first what these actually mean, especially with AMAX and TMAX here. So TMAX is going to basically be the horsepower of the jet, right? So how much that engine can produce, right? How much power it can produce. And then AMAX is going to be how much of that power actually turns into acceleration after its weight and drag is considered. So obviously, as we can see, the Eurofighter is well above the SM2, again, which is no surprise from what we just saw with acceleration. But there's a very big reason I bring this up here. And when we take a look at the AMAX in specific, because again, that's going to be the most important one here to look at, the AMAX, it reaches its peak with the Eurofighter around 0.95 Mach, which in engagements like this clip here, you are going to be hovering a lot of the times around that general range. So again, around probably 0.7 to 1.3 Mach. So you're really using peak engine performance with the Eurofighter in a lot of situations when you're in a little bit that medium close range combat. Now, what does that mean, right? When we're getting to use that peak performance, it is much higher AMAX wise than the SM2. That means we can recommit sooner. We can regain speed faster, so that means we can shoot missiles with more energy, meaning it's going to reach the target faster. It also, again, defensively, we're going to be able to readjust a lot quicker. And really, energy recovery is really king in terms of medium to close range. So very, very big factor when we take a look at a 16v16 setting. Again, how the engine actually performs. So in terms of notch speed at 1.4 Mach, the Eurofighter does it around 6.4 seconds, where the SM2 does it at around 8.4 seconds, so 2 seconds slower. So big difference in terms of notch time here. So taking a look at the RWR for the Eurofighter, we can see here in this, it does have a 360-degree RWR sensor, so you are covered in all angles. You will know where a missile is coming towards you or when it's coming towards you, as well as it does have a MAW system, so you'll also be able to know when infrared missiles are coming towards you, which is a huge, huge advantage in terms of survivability and situational awareness. Switching over to the SM2's RWR. So we can see here its RWR sensor does have some pretty big blind spots, right? So if a missile is coming top down, for example, you won't even know. Your RWR will not be going off, as well as it does not have a MOS system. So RWR wise, the SM2 is very weak compared to the likes of a Eurofighter. So really touching further upon defense here, or just survivability overall, a lot of this ties back into that flight performance or flight model, which is why I wanted to touch upon it first. So again, like we just went over, RWR wise, SM2 is very weak in that section compared to the Eurofighter. Now the other big thing in terms of defense or survivability in terms of a 16v16 setting is going to be its flight performance, right? So it's kind of like I was saying earlier, where the big things is energy recovery is going to be king. So in the case that, you are within that 10 to 25 kilometers, you are probably going to be often notching, recommitting, firing multiple missiles. And that's where the Eurofighter is really going to excel. Again, you can recommit sooner. You can then launch the missile with more energy because you gain speed quicker. You're basically faster, right? You're going to be a lot more dominant in terms of that defensively. And it's like we went over with the notch time too. 2 seconds faster in terms of notching is a very, very big difference. Again, especially in a 16v16 setting. Not only that, once you notch, you'll recover. You're going to be around that probably engine peak performance with the AMAX. And again, that's going to let you simply dominate. And if you guys have ever watched my videos in the past, I always say the Eurofighters will fall. They played 2 times the speed of every other jet in the lobby, and that is specifically why. Everything in terms of their flight performance, engine performance, is just that much faster than everything else in the game. The other things to bring up here is just countermeasures, right? Countermeasure-wise, Eurofighter gets an extreme amount of countermeasures. You do not have to worry about countermeasures at all, or even running out of countermeasures. Now, the good thing with the SM2, and I'll give it this, right, it does have large caliber countermeasures, which, from my understanding, basically are 5 times as good as a regular countermeasure. So, again, countermeasure-wise, they're both pretty good. I think just with the SM2, you need to understand how to use it resourcefully, understand how to use those large caliber countermeasures, but I think both are decent in that spot there. But again, guys, just flight performance wise makes such a big difference in terms of survivability, in terms of performance, right? It is really going to be the key in the 16v16 setting. And again, we'll touch a lot more upon that once we get a little bit more into the BVR range, all of that. In terms of radar, both these jets are absolutely top class. Both very, very good. You can basically see anything out there on the playing field. I would say the biggest difference between these two jets radar-wise is the gimbal limit. So I'm going to showcase that here with the SM2 first. So the SM2 does have 240 degrees of gimbal. So we can see here, I'm basically in a notching position and I can still see the enemies there within that 90-degree angle. Now, I'll touch upon why that makes a difference here in a second. But again, that lets you keep the soft lock even when you're notching. And that is a pretty big advantage when it does come to missiles, is keeping that soft lock. But again, biggest difference, 240 degree gimbal with the SM2. A little bit more range as to how far wide you can go. Now, when we compare that to the Eurofighter here, so the Eurofighter gimbal, at least for the Great Britain and Italian one, is going to be 200 degrees, so 40 degrees less. And we can see that here. Again, I'm showcasing it here on the right side with the radar. So again, you can still technically, just depending on where the enemy is, hold that notch and still be that, or have that soft lock on them, but it's very much so closer. So it is kind of pushing it. And a lot of the times when you do notch, you do need to overcompensate a little bit. So a lot of the times you can't keep the soft lock on. Now, I do just want to showcase what difference that makes. So shout out to Mr. Trashcan82 here for helping me out. But this is going to be with no soft lock. So he shoots a R77-1. And look how quickly I lose this missile, guys. So I instantly notch this missile, and you can see with no soft lock, this missile does not re-lock onto me. And that's going to be the biggest difference. So again, no soft lock. As soon as I break that missile with the notch, it is basically gone. It is going to be very hard to reconnect onto me. And we can see that here with a little bit closer range missile too, right? You can see it does technically relock onto me once there, but then instantly loses reconnecting to me. Now, when we compare that to a soft lock, so again, Trash Can here is holding the soft lock on me, you'll see how many times this actually reconnects and how much harder it is for me to notch this. So look, I notch it there, it reconnects. And then again, I notch it here, reconnects. And then again, we're gonna notch it one more time right there. It loses, you can see it go down, and then boom, it reconnects. So you can see how much harder it is to actually notch a missile with the soft lock. Just to visually show it to you guys, you can still see it's actually still tracking me. Trash Can shoots another missile here, again keeping the soft lock. And closer range, I do want to showcase this. Really not much of a difference in terms of closer range, because the main thing here is soft locking like closer range. When I notch the missile, I'm at such a big change of direction that the missile is going to have an extremely hard time of reconnecting to me either way. So again, close range, in my opinion, soft lock versus no soft lock makes such a minimal difference, it doesn't really matter. But in those longer range engagements, that's where that soft lock is really going to make a difference. And again, I did some testing with this. That was my experience, my outcome with all of this here. But again, it does make a big difference. Now, I do want to dive a bit more into the missiles themselves, because this is always a big talk, especially with the SM2. So taking a look at missiles here. So this here, we're going to start off with just the missile speed. So the speed is 1.45 Mach, and all fired at the same speed, 15 kilometers of a distance for a target. And we can see here in blue is the 120C, the ER in orange, and then the R77 in green. The colors will change, unfortunately, but the ER was obviously the fastest, the R77 was the second fastest, and then the 120C was the slowest. Now, in all honesty, not too much of a difference in terms of time, guys. I'm gonna be honest. I was kind of surprised by this. The difference was very minimal. And again, the big thing that you always want to consider is a lot of people only look at the missile stats. Nothing is ever that simple-minded, unfortunately. You want to consider flight performance, speed, right? Like we talked about earlier in terms of flight performance, the Eurofighter is always going to be faster. What does that mean? The Eurofighter is going to, again, be launching faster. It's going to be faster in terms of the missile launch, more energy, which most likely is going to lead it to being faster overall. Now, I did test it out here, a little bit more BVR range, so I did do 40 kilometers. And yeah, again, comparing the three missiles here, really not too much of a difference. Again, we can see the 120C is a little bit slower here compared to everything else. And that's really about it. Again, I was kind of surprised by these stats here. Not too big of a difference, guys. It's not going to make it. We can see the 120C actually starts speeding up at the end there. Really gains momentum. So again, not much of a difference. So the big things to note here is missile speed between all of these, all very similar. Again, very small difference. And the big thing to bring back to or circle back to is the Eurofighter is, one, going to have better acceleration. Two, reaches and maintains high Mach numbers more easily. Three, excellent climb performance. And that means it can launch missiles from higher energy states, increasing missile range and also increasing the speed of that missile off launch. Now, the other big factor here is how much these radar missiles can pull off rip, right? R77-1s can pull 50 Gs off rip. 120Bs in this case can only pull 35 Gs off rip. And we can see here in this example, the blue is the R77-1, how much faster that turns. Now I'm going to increase the altitude here in just a second as well, just to showcase. But very big difference, guys. Closer range, the R77 is going to absolutely dominate. I feel like that's pretty common knowledge, though, right? The 120s do struggle. Within close range, I would especially say within 5 kilometers or less is where it's really going to struggle. Anything besides that is doable with the 120s, but again, it's going to be very situational. But yeah, I'm going to have to give, in terms of radar missile, the R77 the advantage here with this one. Like we discussed, just solely off missiles, it's a little bit faster and it pulls harder. And again, ERs, not many people are going to bring them. Very, very situational. The issue with ERs is you give up a lot of opportunity. There's big opportunity loss. You have to hold your lock on a target. And we could see, speed-wise, the ER is about the same as the other missiles. So you're holding a lock even like 15, 20 kilometers when you could fire to other people. So again, in a 16v16 setting with R77-1s, not too common. People will bring them. They're usually the best late game. Very situational. But yeah, again, radar missile for me, R77-1 will take the cake. Now, when it comes to the infrared missile side of the loadout here, the 9M is going to absolutely clear the R73s. The 9Ms and the AAM3s are the most broken infrared missiles in the game right now, simply because of the way they do work. So 9Ms have what they call a tracking suspension. So basically, if it detects a burst of flares, it's going to briefly ignore them and predict where the aircraft will go before reacquiring it. Now, side aspect and top down, these are almost undodgeable, which is why they are so broken. And the R73 is going to have what we call FOV gating. So basically, smallens its field of view to the target so that flaring, it will basically ignore the flares. Now again, 9Ms, the tracking suspension is just so broken. Let me show you an example why and break it down as to why this missile is so broken. Okay, so the example here of why this missile is so broken, to really show it, is when you're at a higher level of play and you're in top tier, a lot of the times the way you're going to position yourself is in a notching position. So trying to hold that 90-degree angle when you're in close combat with someone. And again, like I said earlier, tracking suspension, the 9M, AM3, they are absolutely broken side aspect. So what does that mean? If you're holding a notch position, the Eurofighter has a 9M, all they have to do is shoot a 9M and you are dead. So again, I'm going to showcase exactly that right here. So again, it kind of counteracts. So we have a Eurofighter up there. Now again, I can hold the notch here, so I notch his missile. But one, if I hold this notch, he can shoot a 9M. Or two, if I face him like this, and he shoots a 9M, or 120B I mean, I'm dead. So again, it basically counteracts what you normally have to do in order to dodge a Fox 3, which is why it is such a deadly missile and much harder to dodge than an R73. And overall, the R73 does pull more off rip. But again, close range, an R73 is one of the easiest things to simply flare off. It is very easy to flare off close range. That's where it is, good, where it can pull crazy amounts in a close dogfight. But one singular flare will, a lot of the times, even just do the trick. So yeah, again, just to recap, radar missile, I'm going to give that to the SM2, the R77-1s. And then infrared missiles is going to the Eurofighter with the 9Ms. To further touch upon missile count, right, the SM2 is going to get a lot more Fox 3s, right? It is going to get around 4 more than the Eurofighter, so 4 more R77-1s. Now, a lot of people really harp on this, right, saying that this is the biggest reason the SM2 is the best jet. But I'll put it this way, right, for a good player, experienced player, it doesn't make too much of a difference, especially in my experience of playing the game. Again, both are very good. Both are easy to get kills with, in all honesty. 4 missiles or 4 extra Fox 3s. Great, I can maybe apply a little bit more pressure. have a little bit more, but I can always just fly back to base if I need more missiles. So again, not the biggest differentiator for jets, guys. Missile count is good, but it's not going to change the world with that. And again, side-by-side comparison, Eurofighter gets 10 missiles, 2 of the best infrared missiles in the game, and then 8 Fox 3s. And then the SM2 gets 12 Fox 3s with 2 R-73s. So 10 missiles compared to 14. And obviously more missiles are better, right? But again, it doesn't make that substantial of a difference. Now, I know a lot of people too will probably bring up MCMing. Now, what I will say with that, if somebody is really going to MCM in a 16v16 and they do that early in the game, they're just screwing themselves over, right? They're wasting all their missiles to fight one person. Again, guys, this is a 16v16 game mode, not a 1v1. Now, late game, definitely could do something like that. But again, in reality, MCMing in a 16v16 setting is not going to be the most optimal way to play the game. Now, I do want to move on to BVR here. So BVR-wise, a lot of this we already went over here. Again, when we took a look at the missile performance, very, very similar in terms of speed, right? So when we did that example of the 1.45 Mach, missile time was very close together. Again, the biggest difference is one, it's going to be that gimbal limit, with the SM2 being a little bit more, so you can hold your soft lock. And then 2, the other thing is just the speed of the Eurofighter. Now, in my opinion, obviously BVR is not the meta anymore. I don't recommend anybody actually BVR at like 40 kilometers, but I do have to give the slight edge to the Eurofighter here. I think just the speed makes that much of a difference. Again, you are going to reach faster speeds way quicker, so better acceleration, energy retention at those high speeds, and you can maintain those high Mach numbers more easily. Excellent climb. Again, that's going to let you launch missiles from a higher energy state, again, which is going to make the missile reach your enemy a lot faster. I'm sure you guys have experienced that, where a Eurofighter shoots a 120C and it is going like so fast. It happens so quickly. And again, the radar is still good. Like I showcased, you can still hold the lock or the soft lock in a lot of situations, even with the Eurofighter. Moving on to the most important one here, it's going to be 10 to 25 kilometer range. Now, when we look back at the missiles or missile performance, again, everything was very similar. So performance-wise, they reached the target very similarly when going the same speed. So there's going to be 2 main factors here when looking at 10 to 25 kilometer range between these 2 jets here. The first is going to be that radar, right? That gimbal limit that we went over earlier. So the SM2 has around 240 degrees of gimbal, whereas the Eurofighter only has 200. And like we showcased, right, holding that soft lock does make a difference, right? It does relock onto targets. Now, the second component here is going to be flight performance. So like we went over earlier too, in terms of performance for the jets, the Eurofighter is much faster. So its AMAX was a lot higher, its acceleration was 20 to 25 seconds more. So let's break those 2 down a little bit more here. Now, I'm going to start off with the gimbal limit. 200 degrees compared to 240 is not the biggest difference, guys. It is better, right, with the SM2, but it is not game breaking is the key difference here. Like I showcased, you can still a lot of the times hold the soft lock while notching. It's just an occasion. Sometimes you do have to break that, right? But it's still very much so possible. And if you aren't being contested, you can again still hold that soft lock. Now, when it comes to flight performance, that's the key here, guys, in my opinion, for that 10 to 20 kilometer range. It's like I was saying earlier, the big thing here between flight performance is, again, the Eurofighter is going to be able to accelerate better, hold its energy better, reach and maintain the Mach better, which is also going to mean that you can fire your missile at a faster speed. Now, that is the key, guys. is, again, you're constantly going to be able to be a lot faster, fire missiles faster, and do that every play. Because even if you're getting pushed right in that 10 and 20 kilometer range, a lot of the times you will be notching, recommitting, firing multiple missiles. And that's the key, guys. You can regain your speed and position after you defend or notch so much quicker. You can accelerate so much quicker. Again, when we look at that peak AMAX was around 0.9 Mach. Again, that's going to give you a much higher probability. The faster you shoot missiles, faster you're going, that is going to go to the target much faster. And in my opinion, that makes it a lot harder for enemies to notch. Again, once you're in that notching position with the gimbal limit, like we saw in the example, you can still notch it as long as you're holding that notching position. Again, the thing is it just relocks. That's what you want to be aware of. So in my opinion, flight performance is the biggest thing here. If you guys ever seen my previous videos, I will always say Eurofighter is the king of 10 to 25 kilometers. Again, Eurofighter and Rafale, they will play 2 times the speed of everything else in the lobby, and that is the biggest difference in a 16v16 format. Survivability, recovery, defense is going to be more important than having 40 degrees more of gimbal. Now the other thing is just missile count, right? You do get 4 extra missiles. Now that does help in that 10 to 25 kilometer range, don't get me wrong, but to me, any day of the week, I would rather choose that flight performance, better defense, better survivability, better repositioning, better recovery over simply 4 extra missiles. Now, especially with a good player where they know how to use their missiles wisely, 4 missiles I don't really care about. Players that obviously aren't as experienced, they want those extra missiles because they don't know when to fire, don't know the best time to fire. They will probably like that. I think that's why a lot of people do say the SM2 does have the up against the Eurofighter because it does have 4 extra missiles. Again, guys, 16v16 setting. By the time I use all 8 of my Fox 3s in the Eurofighter, most everybody's already dead in the lobby. If it's late game, I can simply fly back to base, rearm, and re-get up there. So not too big of a deal there. And then MCM, if somebody is dumb enough to MCM in the beginning of the game, you're wasting all your missiles. In a 16v16 format, somebody else is going to come and slam you. Now 10 kilometers or closer is very close in my opinion. Again, simply for the fact that R77s are going to be able to pull a lot more. They're going to be able to really dominate within that area. But the AIM-120s are still good within 5 kilometers from my experience. And again, they have the most broken infrared missile here. So 9Ms are very, very deadly on a Eurofighter, closer range, especially at the speed that they can fire them from. Now, dogfighting wise, let's pull up these stats here in terms of turn rate. So when we do take a look at the turn rate here, the big thing is basically in every aspect of what we're looking at here, the Eurofighter dominates in terms of turning. Sustained turning, a good way to put it. So when we take a look at this graph here with the Eurofighter, so a 0 SEP, what that means is you're not losing any energy while you're turning, your turn rate. So we can see that the maximum is around 25.35 degrees. And then the SM2 has to be going a lot faster at 0 SEP. So 0.9 Mach compared to like 0.6 with the Eurofighter. And that's around 22.57. So again, lower turn rate there. And then the numbers that are positive mean that you're gaining energy. Negative means that you are losing energy. Again, the Eurofighter outturns the SM2 in every aspect, which is not surprising. Everybody kind of knows, or common knowledge, that the Eurofighter is the best dogfighter in the game. Now, what I will say with that is everything is very situational, right? Nothing is ever as simple as just turn rate in terms of a dogfight, right? So, stuff like that. What I mean by that is, for example, SM2 has thrust vectoring, right? So it's going to have very good nose authority when everything is very close range and you are going very, very slowly. So a good way to look at it, right, is if you are going maybe 0.5 Mach or lower, the SM2 could probably have the advantage, again, because of thrust vectoring and its strong nose authority, to get its nose on you and try to get that quick kill. Now, anything above 0.5 Mach, the Eurofighter is going to really dominate. Again, where the SM2 can't really utilize that thrust vectoring to its maximum potential, the Eurofighter is going to come out on top. Overall ratings here. So we're going to start with the Eurofighter. Flight performance, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. Right? It has the best flight performance in the game. Nothing comes close. Defense and survivability is also a 10 out of 10. Goes hand in hand with flight performance, as well as the MOS system it gets and the amount of countermeasures that it does have. Missiles is going to be a 6 out of 10 for me. 120 Bs and Cs are not the best close range, right? So within that 10 kilometers, they can struggle a bit, specifically 5 to 6 kilometers or closer. And yeah, 9Ms are very good, so it does raise it a little bit to 6 out of 10. Radar is going to be an 8 out of 10 for me. The AESA radar is very solid, has a good gimbal limit, but is not the best radar in the game. BVR-wise, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. It's like I was saying earlier, this Eurofighter is so fast, it's going to get to those higher top speeds, be able to launch from a better energy state, and again, a lot of the times also still hold that soft lock while having that, again, energy state advantage. 10 to 25 kilometers, 10 out of 10. Eurofighter is the king of that range. Again, comes down to everything considered above. Less than 10 kilometers, 7 out of 10. Again, the 120Bs are a bit lackluster, closer range. It would be lower if this jet did not have 9Ms. 9Ms are absolutely lethal, especially 5 to 6 kilometers or closer. And then dogfighting, it is the best dogfighter in the game. 10 out of 10 there. So that does give a score of 70 out of 80 points. Now moving on to the SM2. Flight performance is a 7 out of 10. Again, not nowhere near as good as the Eurofighter or even just the Rafale. So not the best in terms of flight performance. Defense and survivability, I'm going to give that a 6 out of 10. Again, that goes hand in hand with flight performance, as well as no MOS system, and its RWR has a lot of big blind spots that can screw you over. Missiles, 9 out of 10. R-77s are solid all around the board. Close range, long range. R-73s are not the best, so it does bring it down just a little bit. Radar, 10 out of 10. Best radar in the game in my opinion. Again, that huge gimbal limit, as well as just how strong it is. BVR, 8 out of 10. Again, like we went over with the missiles, around the same speed to get to target, around the same speed that it was shot at. But again, Eurofighter is going to be faster all around. 120s will actually get there faster. So 8 out of 10 BVR. 10 to 25 kilometers, 8 out of 10. Again, it is not like the Eurofighter with the flight performance. Really, that's what it's missing. Below 10 kilometers, so less than 10 kilometers, 8 out of 10. Again, R-77s being able to pull 50 Gs is a big advantage. But again, what makes it not too much higher is the 9Ms. The 9Ms are so deadly within that range that it is quite risky for the SM2 to actually close in. Dogfighting, 6 out of 10, right? Turn rates are not the best. Again, 0.5 Mach or less. Has good nose authority, but in reality, you're not going to get in that slow of a dogfight in most cases, right? In most cases, it will be a little bit faster, in which a Eurofighter will destroy. And a lot of other jets too. So overall score with that is a 62 out of 80. So overall, Eurofighter wins. Let me know what you guys think, if you agree or disagree, and let me know what jet I should do next.